Hello everyone. On October 28th of 2023, 16-year-old Preston Lord would attend a Halloween party in Queens Creek, Arizona, a town just southeast of Phoenix. And just 2 days later, he would be dead. But how did this happen? That night, Preston ended up attending a very large Halloween party. Around 100 to 200 teens had showed up. And according to the homeowner, his daughter was only supposed to have a few friends over for a very small Halloween party. However, things seemed to get out of hand. And it started getting out of hand when a large amount of uninvited guests ended up showing up from around 5 schools in the area. This party that Preston was attending, he didn't even know the homeowner. The teenage girl who lived at the home didn't know Preston. She didn't know a majority of the people there because it seemed like one thing led to another. Maybe a mass text ended up getting set out, or one person told this person that told this person, and it just kept going, and everyone's like, well, yeah, we want to go to a party, and they all ended up showing up at this girl's house for this party that wasn't meant to be a big party. So just 2 hours into this party that had started, they all ended up getting kicked out. Neighbors had actually called the police over this party that was happening. One neighbor saying, and I quote, "We had students falling out of cars. We had kids vomiting in our front yards here. We were trying to take care of teenagers with open alcohol. It was sick." End quote. At 9:07 p.m. that night, the non-emergency line received a call about a possible disturbance involving juveniles near 194th and Via del Oro. Officers did arrive, however, they reported seeing the teens leaving the area and there was no illegal activity, so they ended up leaving. Now, sometime between when the police had showed up and left because they didn't see anything, that was really going on, the kids were dispersing, everyone was going home. Between that time and 40 minutes later is when Preston would end up being attacked and beaten to death. Because at 9:49 p.m., police would receive a second call claiming a teen had been found laying on the road near 149th Street and Via del Rancho Road. The homeowners of that party didn't even know that this attack was happening because after the kids had left, they had walked down the street, and this seemed to happen at an intersection that was just down the street from the home. Preston, at some point in time during that 40 minutes, had been beaten and left on the side of the road. The perpetrators walking home like nothing had happened. A neighbor saying, and I quote, "The teenagers that were trying to help get home just kept saying that students were performing CPR and that something had happened." End quote. Preston had been so injured that CPR had to be administered, and he was actually taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, including a severe brain injury, which just 2 days later, Preston would die from. Now, thankfully, the Queens Creek police ended up classifying Preston's death as a homicide. We've seen it happen one too many times where teenagers end up mysteriously going missing or dying at parties, and police end up classifying it as an accident or something along those ends, or there's a cover-up of sorts. But thankfully in this case, it was from the start, it ruled as a homicide, which there's just one too many where justice is not being served.
Preston was one of the best parts of my life. He worked hard at both sports and his schoolwork. He always did what I asked him the first time I asked him. He was a kind, gentle, loving soul that we will miss forever. The acts of violence committed against my son on October 28th and how he died as a result will unfortunately also remain in my mind forever. It's important to me and my family that we are a part of the solution, and I know that many of you here tonight feel the same way. I always told my kids that if you want to do better, you have to be willing to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, I can do better. City of Chandler, we can do better.
But the question is, who did this to Preston? Who would want to do this to this young man who was just going out to have some fun that night? Well, it turns out that there is a gang of sorts in this community of rich teens that are called the Gilbert Goons, which they're named after the city of Gilbert, Arizona. And this group of teens is said to have attacked multiple other teens in the area of the Southeast Valley over the last year or so. Many of these attacks happening in Gilbert. Now, it's said that this gang would often find themselves assaulting random people in mall parking lots, outside fast food restaurants, at parks, and at house parties. On November 9th, police would end up announcing that they had several search warrants in execution. However, no arrests were made. A few days later, on November 14th, they announced that they identified multiple persons of interest. Police said that they had received hundreds of tips since the assault and were in process of reviewing a substantial amount of data before making an arrest. At this point in time, a $10,000 reward was also put out for more information that could lead to an arrest. However, as you will continue to see in this, an arrest still has not been made. On November 26th, the teen violence would continue when a 17-year-old student at Casa Grande Union High School was shot and killed at another house party. Police would say that an altercation between an unknown number of partygoers took place and shots were fired.
The parents of a teenager killed at a weekend house party in Casa Grande.
Yeah, two 17-year-old girls were hit by stray gunfire at this party, and one of them did not make it. Linda Williams has more.
She only had those 17 years with us, and I'm glad for everything. I'm glad that I made her my #1 priority since the day she was born. My whole life was focused on my daughter and making her life fruitful.
Haley Stevens' parents want you to know the special young woman this community lost this weekend to senseless gun violence. She was a cheerleader, a straight-A student at Casa Grande High School. She was also a passionate member of the community.
Just a sweetheart. She smiled a lot. She laughed a lot.
Haley's father is on the department. Meanwhile, Casa Grande police continue their investigation. They say dozens of teenagers came to this vacant home for a party Saturday night. At about 1:30 Sunday morning, a fight broke out, followed by gunfire.
Some type of an altercation between multiple attendees of the party that turned into a gunfight. And so we also know that there was more than one shooter. There were people shooting at each other.
The third suspect has been arrested in a shooting over the weekend that left a teenage girl dead and one other hurt. Police have arrested 18-year-old Josiah Street of Coolidge. Victim, 17-year-old Haley Stevens, was killed at a party in Casa Grande on Sunday morning.
That night, a total of 9 teenagers were arrested in connection to the shooting. And just 2 days after the Casa Grande house party shooting, another teen was shot and killed in Santan Valley. His name was Jameer Jenkins, and he actually attended the exact same high school Preston did.
Led a prayer walk at Combs High School Wednesday as students yet again mourn the loss of a classmate.
As a parent, I want to show to my kids that we can still pray for good.
The Pinal County Sheriff's Office says they arrested a 17-year-old they believe shot Jameer Tuesday night in this park. In addition to being a student, Jameer played football for Combs. In a statement, the high school saying in part, quote, "The impact of these events is not only felt by our Combs High School campus, but by countless students, staff, and families district-wide whose lives have been touched by these senseless acts of violence." Sheriff Mark Lamb says he doesn't believe the cases are related.
This is 2 kids who had a little bit of a long-standing beef. They got into a verbal argument, and unfortunately one pulled a gun out and fired 1 shot.
The Maricopa County attorney also weighing in tonight, calling the trend of teen gun violence concerning.
Now, a teen named Anthony J. Garcia is actually a suspect in Jameer's murder, and he is also being charged with 1 count of second-degree murder. It's kind of crazy that all of this is happening in Gilbert, Arizona, and the surrounding areas, because when I think of Arizona, and I especially like the Gilbert area, I think of, Mormons, and everything that surrounds Mormons is the opposite of this. It's usually like baking cookies and taking cute Instagram photos. So it really does show that, violence can really happen anywhere. And it's unfortunate and it's very tragic because this is all involving teenagers. Now in late December, police would announce that they were submitting charges against several adults and juveniles in Preston's case. And they'd also announced that they turned the case over to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for review. Now, despite not much happening, it seems in Preston's case at the moment that has been made public, we do see that police have made other arrests in assaults connecting to the Gilbert goons. On top of that, an unnamed 17-year-old's house was searched by police in a wealthy suburb of Gilbert called White Wing in connection to Preston's case. So the police are actually actively investigating this still, which is great.
And reviewing videos of his that show criminal activity.
This is the booking photo of 20-year-old Jacob Pennington. The Pinal County Sheriff's Office making the arrest Wednesday after this video of an assault in a desert area from November was turned over to investigators.
We determined through our investigation that Jacob Pennington, 20-year-old from Gilbert, was one of our main suspects in that. And so this morning we arrested him on that case.
Jacob, accused of not only hitting the 16-year-old victim, but holding him down while others continued attacking. Sheriff Mark Lamb saying more arrests could be coming.
Anybody that watches the video can see there's more than one person involved in this assault.
Court records show Jacob told deputies he was associated with the group the Gilbert Goons. Currently, the Pinal County Sheriff's Office is one of several agencies across the state investigating whether the group can be classified as a criminal street gang.
State versus Noah Pennington.
Jacob's brother, Noah Pennington, also behind bars for weapons and drug charges. The ABC 15 investigators finding past court records showing Noah was also charged in a violent assault case involving a 14-year-old back in May of 2023. Those court record saying Noah had been involved in multiple shootings and violent crimes in the Gilbert area. The incidents, police say, escalating in frequency and severity.
Now, recently I have seen that it has come out that there was a video filmed of Preston's murder and police have footage of it. It said that in this video, they were also able to identify multiple individuals, which is probably how they're, getting search warrants and, put this as a case out to the prosecutor's office. However, as far as I've seen, this video has not been released due to its graphic nature, which is understandable considering Preston was beaten so violently that he died from it. So it's essentially a video of him being murdered. On January 23rd of 2024, so just a couple of weeks ago, the town mayor named Julia Wheatley would end up announcing that she was going to have a community meeting and she wanted to have a conversation on teen violence. It ended up being announced that the office was reviewing over 2,000 pieces of digital evidence, including more than 600 videos from that night, which is probably going to take them a long time to go through. I've also seen that a lot of people have been showing up to these events wearing orange in honor of the hashtag Justice for Preston movement. Mayor Wheatley was also quoted saying, and I quote, "We all have the same goal. We all want justice for Preston," end quote. One resident also expressed how teen violence had gotten out of hand in the area, saying that Preston's death was ugly and sinister and called on police to do a better job. Now, as I said, at this point, no arrests have been made and none of the names have been made public for the most part for who was involved in Preston's death. This case honestly reminds me a lot of the Trent Learncamp case. That case happened out of Georgia. It had very similar circumstances. However, Trent would attend these parties in the rich area and the rich kids would essentially torture him and bully him to the point where he was hospitalized at one point. Thankfully, in Trent's case, he was not killed. And I think it's just such a bold example of what is happening with teens. And it always seems to strangely be in the rich areas. Why is it a trend that rich kids are bullying and attacking and abusing other teens to the point where they are either almost killed or that they are killed? What is the point of that? I think the fact that this continues to happen is just really something that I think everyone needs to have a conversation with their own teenagers with if they have teenagers. It's one of those things of if you see something, say something. It could prevent a tragedy like this from happening again. And it's just so strange to me because, when I was a teenager, I didn't see anything like this happening, nothing even remotely close like this happening. And I went to school with a lot of kids who were very well off. So I don't know if it's just something that's primarily happening in the US. Let me know if you see this happening in other countries or other areas of the US. We've seen this now in Georgia. We see it in Arizona. It's just really heartbreaking to see that this is continuing to happen. And they're just such senseless deaths. Why are other teens attacking each other? For no reason, literally no reason. I am thankful though that the police in this case are looking into this and are looking to press charges. They are investigating because Preston was murdered. There's no way around this. He was murdered and he deserves justice and his family deserves justice. He died a very brutal death. And it is absolutely ridiculous that these teens are still walking the street and are able to continue to do this because as we've seen, there were more murders that occurred after this. So what do you all think about this case? Let's have a conversation below. This was actually a case that was recommended for me to look into. And if you have any cases that you want me to look into, let me know down below as well and I will look into them. With that, I hope you all stay safe out there. My heart goes out to Preston's family. Make sure to lock your windows and doors and I will see you in the next video. Bye.